So today I'm going to be talking about AI and Ancestry. This is for beginners to AI. I began my own artificial intelligence journey about 2 years ago when I heard it was wonderful and it was horrible. And whenever I hear extremes like that, I like to check it out for myself. And so that's how this all began. Here's some of the negative comments I heard early on. And the first was that it takes away jobs. And yes, it does. Any kind of new innovation that comes along, there's an adjustment in the workforce. Think about this. How many blacksmith and carriage makers do you know? Actually, in Northeast Indiana, I do know some. There is still a career. It's just not, the demand isn't there as it once was. My first job in high school was part-time as a clerk typist. Yeah, that's not going to be a job that most people would go into today. So it was designed to be a tool, not a replacement, but there has been job loss. There also has been job gain. It is developed on a large language model, and that is meaning that it needs people with linguistic skills. So those English majors, language arts teachers, editors that had difficulty finding jobs or were low paid are now getting some really good high paying jobs. Now, it also gives misinformation. That is called a hallucination. And today I'm going to show you some ways that you can minimize that or spot it real quick. I've had 3 this year, which isn't terrible. I would prefer none, but one of them was when I was helping beta test a new product that was being developed. Beta testing is when it's not ready for release, but it's almost there, and you're hoping make those bugs go away. Well, it was a speech recognition tool, and everything I said, it was not typing. It made up a great story, much better than I would have come up with, but it wasn't anything close. Now, you can understand that with a new product, but unfortunately, with the release, there still are bugs in the system. So I'll show you two and how we can avoid them. Now, early on, there was a lot of concern about stealing data and privacy issues. And that came about because when the tech folks were developing this product, they swept across the entire internet, everything on the World Wide Web, and they captured it. I call that its brain. They call it its training data. And when they did that, they took some copyrighted material. There's about 30 court cases right now, and we're going to let the judges decide who is going to have to handle that mess. Now, in regards to privacy, initially, the only AI out there, ChatGPT, which is a part of OpenAI, lets you keep your information that you were sharing to yourself. All the others, everything, well, Claude did that too for a while. All of that went into that brain, that training data. So there wasn't a lot of privacy options, but they have come around knowing that that was a concern for people. Now you can go into the settings of Google's Gemini and you can make it just private. Claude, unbelievably, they switch from having everything private to now you have to go in and tell it you want it to be private. And ChatGPT has remained you only can go into the training data if you go into settings and set it that way. Now, there is some bias, and I'm going to be showing you how I deal with it when it comes up. And I had to laugh. Yesterday on Facebook, I saw a lady posted, it just didn't work. AI just didn't work because she asked it where she could buy a product locally and it couldn't tell her that. And it made me laugh. I mean, I know she was frustrated, but it's not really designed to be a search engine. It's designed in other ways that we'll go over today. And think about this. You learned how to do reading, writing, and arithmetic. That was far more complex than it is to use AI. Now, often when I tell folks that I am involved with AI, I have come to use it in my work as a professional genealogist. I get the most perplexed looks on people's faces. I've even had someone ask me, "Have you not seen the movie Terminator?" Well, yeah, I have. That's fiction. This is computer code. It doesn't have goals or free will. If I unplugged it, it's not going to work. And so I think the biggest misconception left is that it is new, and it isn't. It has been around for decades. What is new is that we can use it for free or a reduced rate in our own homes. Now, the ones in red are the ones I am going to be talking about today. And I know some of you were probably thinking, huh, which should I go with? Which one should I use? And my answer is all of them. You can create a free account everywhere. And the reason that you're going to want to check them all out is because think about whatever type of vehicle you drive. Why did you purchase that make and model? It probably had something that attracted you to it, right? And that's kind of how AI is. There's enough of them out there. You're going to end up feeling more comfortable with one than the other. But they all can work for you. And I do go between one and the other. Now, I do need to issue a disclaimer. I do have the paid version of Chat GPT. I share that with my husband. It is $20 a month. You don't have to pay for anything that I'm going to talk about today. If there is something that ChatGPT can't do for you with the free version, I'm going to give you a workaround. I do like that it maintains more memory, so I can go back to something I did 2 years ago and pick up right where I left off. It doesn't have to be reinventing the wheel. I do like one of their graphic design tools, but there's a workaround for that. But the biggest thing for me is I'm kind of lazy. I like to drop and drag. When I have a document, and you can't do that with Chat GPT. You can't upload unless you have the paid account. So your workaround for that would be to type it in, and that for me is just a little bit more time consuming. Now, if you think you haven't started using AI, I think you're going to be surprised to find out you have. Look at all those at the very bottom of the screen. If you've gone to any of those sites, you're already using AI. It's embedded in the software, just like it is for probably your doctor's office, your insurance company. Just about anybody out there today with a business that's large does have an AI component. Now, I'm not going to be specifically showing you how to use the AI in Ancestry or Family Search today. That's not the scope of this presentation. It's to give you an overview. And I know that if you are serious about genealogy, you're well aware of the genealogy proof standard. And AI can help us accomplish all of these. And we have lots of varied tasks. And these are today what I am going to share you examples of that you can get these done more effectively and efficiently very quickly. Now, the first I'm going to talk about is summarization. And if you're taking notes, put your pencil down. You don't have to do that anymore. Any type of sound from a lecture, like through Zoom or GoToMeeting or even Teams, YouTube videos, podcasts, your old VHS videos, even if you have tape recordings from way back when, maybe of a great aunt that was interviewed, anything that can be converted to an MP4 or a WAV file, it can transcribe and then summarize. And it doesn't go for just audio. If you have any genealogical notes, your research, if you have that somewhere on your computer or you can scan it in, or even the chat box, there's a lot of great stuff in that chat box, right? And I wish I could be looking at it right now, but then I'd be distracted and I wouldn't be able to present. But a lot of times afterwards, we think, oh, there was a URL in there and I wanted to capture it and I forgot. You don't have to worry anymore. Just copy and paste it into your favorite AI and it will give you the information. You can see on the right-hand side of that slide where the bullet points are. That was what I did in an AI class I took from the chat box. It only gave me the people's first names, which was nice. Now I can get that in a narrative format. I can get it in a table. I can have it by numbers or even the old-fashioned Roman numerals. Remember those outlines we did back in the day? Capital A must have a capital B. It'll do whatever you ask it. Now, we do a lot of extractions, and that can be sometimes time consuming, right? So, I had something absolutely creepy, like bone weary, strange, happen to me when I first started using it for extractions. I took 6 different newspaper articles from my deceased paternal grandfather, Edwin Leininger, who died right here in Fort Wayne, and I uploaded them to ChatGPT and I asked it to extract the proper nouns. That would be the names and the locations. And if it could determine relationship between that, let me know. Well, it did such a phenomenal job that it spooked me. Not just because it got it right, it got more right than was in the articles. It gave me the names of 3 of his ancestors and the correct relationships, but they were nowhere in the articles. Now, that was bizarre. And I know some of you are thinking, oh, that's that hallucination where it makes it up. But here's the thing, it was correct. I mean, honestly, since 1790, enumerators have only spelled Leininger right 4 times in the census. So, how could it get Theobald Leininger as his grandfather? And how would it know about John Leininger and Emma Landfair? I mean, those aren't like John Smith's, right? So I kept asking it and it kept apologizing. When it does something wrong, it's going to tell you. And it will, really not like a human. It's not going to roll its eyes at you. It's going to say, I'm sorry, I'll fix it. But that's not what I wanted. I wanted to know, how do you know more about my grandfather than you should? And you can see in the second column at the bottom, underlined in red, it says, I don't have external knowledge or access beyond the articles and training data. Remember that training data was the brain when it swept the internet. Well, this is no longer true. Now it can go out in real time and check out the internet. But when I did this experience, that wasn't the case. Well, I knew it wasn't in the articles, so that meant this information came from the training data, and it likely came from me. I have been blogging for over 10 years and I have written extensively about these people. So I now know that my blog articles are probably in its brain. So you might be thinking, oh, there's copyright and a privacy issue. But no, it's neither of those either. I don't have copyrights on my blog. And if it was going to be private, I wouldn't have shared it out there in the first place. So it didn't do anything wrong. It was error on my part. When I wrote the prompt, that's the directions that you give it, I should have said, only use the information in the articles. And I didn't do that. And it was trying to be helpful. So it's found other information for me. Now, I'm always on people's cases about write up your research, right? And we have a million excuses of why we don't do that. There's not time. We don't feel that we're competent as writers, or we have visions of our high school English teachers dancing in our head. I do that sometimes. So, this can help you get over that quite simply. Now, what you're seeing in the white section is an awful AI narrative, and I leave it up because I want you to keep in the back of your mind, you must always check its work. You can't trust it enough, right? It makes mistakes just like we humans do. The first line alone will tell you something's not right. It says that my husband's third great grandfather lived in Vastraharg, Östergötland, Sweden, in 1700 to 1882. Now, this man is important in my family because we carry his surname. This was the time when patronymics ended. Some cultures took the dad's first name and tacked it on to the kids as their last name and added a son or daughter. Well, this ended with him. So we're always going to be Samuelson. But he's not so special because he's a descendant of Methuselah. He did not live for 182 years. What the AI confused was the record set title. Now, it's gotten a lot better since 2 years ago. And even at that time, it could produce a very lovely narrative very quickly. What you're seeing in the beige on the first column is computer speak. If we looked at that, Our families wouldn't be interested in reading that either, right? But that's what the computer would need to write a good narrative. And you don't have to write it yourself. No matter what software or where you store your information, as long as there is some component, this is called individual summary from Roots Magic, but you don't need to use Roots Magic. Any of them have something like this. And when you upload that, you can get this very nicely written narrative. Is it perfect? No, but pretty close. The first problem with it is the endnotes and footnotes. And yes, it can do endnotes and footnotes for you, but it did them in Roman numerals. I have no idea why. So when you see something that you don't like, you just need to tell it and tell it how you want it. So I wrote back and said, change the endnotes from Roman numerals to Arabic and always use Arabic going forward. I only had to tell it once and I've never had to tell it again. Now, I do wish it had elaborated more on his Civil War service, his untimely death, and named the children. And I could have easily gone back in there, right? But being lazy, I wanted AI to do this for me. So I got what I thought was a brilliant idea. Yes, I decided I was going to write a clear prompt, right? And that's just directions. And you can see that when I tell you to do clear, I don't always practice what I preach. The first sentence alone is messed up. It says, today you're an expert data analysis. That doesn't even make sense. I should have typed data analyst. But here it understood what my needs were, even though I wasn't perfect. And I share this because I want you to not be afraid of it. You're going to make mistakes as you're going along and learning it, just like it will. So be tolerant of yourself. Now, in the highlighted areas, I wanted it to give me dry recitation. And that means just the facts, ma'am. Don't make anything up. And I wanted it to avoid editorialization. Don't give me opinions. I just want those facts. And in genealogy, we use military style dates. That means it's the day, the month, the year. So I asked it to do that too. Now, everything, all that stuff in the middle, in the quotations, were the headings that I wanted it to create for a table. Yeah, it'll do tables. And they come as either a PDF you can pop right into Word or a CSV file. And that's what Excel reads. So I just have to copy and paste it wherever I want, and I can manipulate it. Now I want you to look at the first column. And I know it's a little blurry. I apologize for that. But those were all the places I went out on the web and pulled information about Samuel August Samuelson. I put that information in most of those places. Some of them is software. It can't go into those places because it doesn't have a membership. It can pull from lots of things on the internet like Hathy Trust or Google Books, but it can't go into Ancestry per se and look at your online family tree. So I pulled information like that individual summary that I showed you a few slides ago, and I uploaded all of it so it would create this table. Now, this table isn't perfect either. If you look where the red arrow is, it did not understand that the last four digits in the parentheses were the death dates and should have been moved in the column over. So you train it when you see something like that and tell it, and then going forward, it gets the concept. Well, I thought now that it had all of this background information and more about Sam, it would write me the most complete, big, beautiful narrative. And what I got was absolute garbage. It just confused the system. You can see where the problem laid at the very beginning, where it says it was across multiple genealogical platforms. And it was. But it was so many platforms at once, it couldn't drill down and give me the footnotes or the endnotes because, well, did I want it from Ancestry or did I want the record set that was in Ancestry? So you can see it was just too much. It therefore didn't even remember that it was supposed to do military style for the dates. And it told me his baptism was a significant event in his early life. That's editorialization. No, not really. It was important for his parents and the godparents, but he was 3 days old, and I suspect he didn't remember, just like I don't remember mine. And I was a ripe old, almost 4 weeks old. So this wasn't going to work. Where I failed here was I should have done something called a prompt chain. I should have taken that first narrative that I really liked, and I should have then uploaded one of the other parts. I could have done maybe family search because it had the children's names, right? And I create a new prompt, a new direction, which you see in yellow. It says now write a revised narrative for Samuel August Samuelson, adding any new info, which we know would be the kids and maybe something else from the upload. I would have re-uploaded it. And then I would have said, if you find a conflict, italicize, bold, underline, whatever your heart desires, and include both pieces. Why? Because I want to be the one that determines which of the conflict is the correct one I want to add. We're the experts here. It's assisting us reading things very quickly, producing things very efficiently, but we're the brains behind the operation. And then once I did that, I could have picked another one. I don't know, maybe my heritage, maybe family tree maker, and uploaded that information, gave it the same prompt, and done that for each one. And eventually, it would have taken more time, but it wouldn't have taken probably 15 minutes. I would have gotten a very clear and wonderfully written narrative. Now, this is going to be something that will change your entire experience. I learned this trick from Steve Little. He is the AI guru from the National Genealogical Society. And I don't know why more people don't do this because honestly, it's going to save you so much time. You're going to go whichever one you eventually like to use to the settings. And I'm showing you on the left-hand side what the settings would look like. That's for Chat GPT. It's on, usually their settings are on the left-hand side, and this one is closer to the bottom. If you clicked where that blue arrow is pointing, you can type in there anything you want it to do every single time you go on there. So I tell it what hats to wear. I want it to be a professional genealogist with certain expertise, and I want it to be a skilled narrative writer. I want those dates in military style, and every time it gives me a fact, I want it in a Chicago style source citation. Why? That helps eliminate hallucinations. My second hallucination of the year was when it gave me a phenomenal story about something that never happened. And when I asked, did you find this information? That's when it admitted it could have happened. Yeah, coulda, woulda, shoulda. It didn't. And so I told it, I'm going to remind you again, I need the Chicago style source. And I haven't had it forget since then. Now, why do I pick Chicago style? I can't use Elizabeth Shown Mills Evidence Explained because it's under copyright. Chicago style was the basis of her work. It's what historians and social scientists use. It's what we did when we were back in school writing those term papers. And I know you probably don't really remember all of how to do that. You don't have to, it will do that for you. Now, you'll also notice that when I say Jeannie, it knows that I'm Lori. And the reason that I name my GPT is because I share this account with my husband, and his needs for his business are different than mine. So his information is in there too. He doesn't care about Chicago style source citations, and he doesn't want dates in military style. It can customize and differentiate all of your family members' needs by just taking a few minutes and going into settings and putting whatever your request is. Now, this is what a Chicago style source citation looks like. Not really all that different from Evidence Explained, and you can tailor it any way you want. Now, translations and transcriptions often are problematic for us, right? Because we don't speak or read the language, and we aren't sure that the record we found is for our family. So, this is how I've resolved that issue. What you're seeing on this slide is a clip of Samuel August's baptismal record, and I've underlined that top word in red. At the bottom, you can see I typed it in. And that was using Google Translate. Google has a number of AIs. Some of them are specific to do just one thing over the other. And in this case, I just picked this one to use. Now, I knew it was Swedish, but if you don't know the language, you don't have to worry. It'll figure it out for you. You also can notice that in the word underline, the last letter U has two dots above it. Those are diacritical marks. Now, I didn't even bother to find that shortcut on my keyboard. It can figure that out without it. I mean, if you want to go ahead and do that, that's fine. But we, I think, can all agree that January is the translation of that word. And I know that is correct because his tombstone has his January as his birth month on it. And I have some records in English that also say he was born in January. Well, 2 years ago in August, right before I began using AI, I needed that piece translated and transcribed for a Lineage Society application my husband was applying for. So I found a living, breathing human being who specialized in translations and gave that information. Now, that's what you're seeing in the first column. Everything in red was lacking what it should have been. We see that the birth month was identified wrong as July. It did not explain what the 3 and the 6 were. The 3 is the birth date, the 6 was the baptism. The word parents was translated. The word actually should have been son. And yeah, that's not a big to do, right? But it does tell you what the custom was of that time and in that place. And the person told me there was no translation in English for the word after witness, which isn't correct. Now, what you see on the right-hand side, I picked two different AIs. One is Google Gemini. That's not the same as Google Translate. Translate cannot do narratives, it can't do tables, but Gemini can. So I just happened to pick two. It doesn't matter which two you pick. Just think you're at McAllister's or Panera's and you're picking two, right? And all the things that were in green, underlined, were what the human got wrong, but the AI got correct. Now, AI wasn't perfect either. It gave me an abbreviation for the word Stora. I have no idea why. And it misread Nielsen for Elfson. And ChatGPT looks pretty good, but it left off something really critical, the birthday. 3. So, what do we do now if we know that humans don't get it right and AIs don't get it right? We still have work to do. So, this is what I do going forward. I pick two, and it doesn't matter. Transcribus is another really good one to use. It's a little bit more complex for beginners, but it was developed over in Europe and they've done a fabulous job with it. So that might be one you want to consider. And when you get the two, identify the differences. Compare it to the actual document. You can clearly, at that point, identify Nielsen for Elfson and the Stora for the H and see that it was missing the 3. But if there is a word that was translated into English that's different between the two AIs, I then pull out a dictionary and a hard copy and I look it up and make the final determination. Now, if I was going to use this for an article I was writing or a Lineage Society application, by all means, I would then consult with a human and I would have them translate it. But when I got it back, I would already know what it said. And if it came like what I got, we would have a follow-up conversation. Now, it's not so great with indexing. I had acquired through auction a number of funeral home books, and you could see the condition. They were horrible. I scanned them in, but I wanted an index created of them. And when it can't do something, it'll tell you how to accomplish it. In this case, it told me I needed to purchase some OCR software to get the job done. Now, identifying people, that's always a big problem for us. I don't know about you, but my family was not real good about writing on the backs of photos who these folks were. And I can guess who some of them are, but I don't know who all of them are. Well, it's not going to be able to give you a name because it's not psychic, but it can help you in what I'm about to describe. I had a 1923 annual, a high school yearbook, from my county. And in it was a picture of a club for all boys, and none of them were named. But there was also throughout this book pictures of the boys with their names. So I created two different files, one of just the club and one of the boys with their names. And I asked ChatGPT to identify, play macho so I could tell who the kids in the club were. And it told me it couldn't do it, but it gave me these special AIs that were developed to do a task such as that. Now, I chose not to go forward with it because at the time I was playing with this, none of those had a component for privacy. And that club was the Ku Klux Klan Club. Yeah, welcome to DeKalb County. Now, those boys are long dead. They're grown and they aged out. They would have been 15, 16, 17 in 1923. So we know they're no longer with us. And you should only use AI with information about the deceased. But here's an added caution. Sometimes, in many families, names come down through the ages. And I don't know if there is a man today out there that inherited the name of one of those boys that was in that club. I didn't want that information out there public. That person today didn't make that choice to be there and may be very different than their ancestor, and that would not be fair. And so I chose not to go forward with that task. So keep this in the back of your mind. Only use it with deceased people's information. And if you're going to use it with somebody that may be affected that's living, by all means, don't do it. Now, I talked earlier about extractions with my grandfather, right? Those obituaries often contain information about the living. So stop and think before you upload. In that case with my grandfather, all of the named people are deceased. I am one of the unnamed grandchildren, so it was fine to go forward with it. Now, it is phenomenal with identifying symbols. A lady came to me. She found this on her great grandparents' grave in Illinois, and they just kind of plopped there. Sometimes we have family that just show up somewhere and there are brick walls and we can't figure out where they came from or who their parents were. Well, that was her situation. And so it told me all about this symbol and that it was commonly used by a particular religious group and that it was begun in New England. Well, this was news to her. Now she had a hint of where they may have come from. Well, she looked around and she found close to the cemetery there was a church of that particular denomination, and she contacted them, and sure enough, her great grandparents had been parishioners. And even better, they had a photo of her great grandma who had been in a women's guild. She'd never seen a picture of this woman. So it can help you find some stuff that's buried out there that we would not have any clue of where to look. Now, I've been mentioning the word GPT all through this presentation and not really explained what that meant. GPT is a tech term that stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. And all that means is it does something with pre-training information you gave it, and it transforms, it changes it, whichever way you asked. So all the things that we've been talking about are when you first go on to an AI and you just get in the chat box and you start typing your directions. This is a little bit different. OpenAI's ChatGPT was the first to develop this concept, but now others are coming on. Google has its GEMS and Anthropic's Claude has its own, but I'm going to use this from ChatGPT because they've done it the longest. If you want to use a GPT, and by all means you really do, because it's going to cut back on hallucinations. People create these. All right, this isn't from its training data when it swept the web. People have found information that's good and solid and created their own GPTs that you can use. Now, you can make your own up, whether you have the free or the paid version, and you don't have to share it with anyone. Or you can get a link and share it with friends, or you can share it with the whole world. And so to access them, on the first page of ChatGPT, you'll see the word GPT. Underneath it, you'll see the word explore. Click on explore, it will bring up a new page. And on that page, you type in there whatever you want: genealogy, family history, population, migration. I've even created one out there for native plants for Northeast Indiana. So if you want a purple plant that grows in clay in the shade, you can just go in there and it'll list the types that you can purchase. Now, when I was beginning my AI journey, I only gave it tasks I already knew everything about because I didn't trust it. And it was kind of like I was testing it. In this case, you see this photo. I knew all about those people. But when I uploaded it to Genealogy Eyes, which is one of the GPTs, it told me their socioeconomic status. It told me their belief system, about what time of year it was, why they were probably in that cemetery that day, and it also told me their political party. I'm not making this up. And it was all 100% correct. It even told me that it was somewhere in the Midwest, and if I could give it some more information, it would narrow it down. And I said, Illinois, big state. It said, check Graceland in Chicago. And that's exactly where it was taken. Now, it's so with architecture because don't we all want to live next door to people who maintain their property? Well, this is my ancestral home on my maternal side, and it's built in a little village outside of Zagreb, Croatia. And that house was built by my third great grandfather in the 1850s. Now, I know it doesn't look like that because it's been well loved and well maintained, which is what threw the AI. It said it was merely speculative, but it thought it was from the late 20th century. But it did tell me what the building construction materials were, the location was somewhere in the Balkans, and why it was that design. The people lived upstairs and the business was downstairs. Now, it can do great with large amounts of data. It can't write a narrative with too much, but it can organize large amounts, as we saw with that table. And so in this, I was just playing with it. And to be honest, this is kind of meaningless, but it's fun. I took my deceased father in law, William Lewis Samuelson's tree, back to his great grandparents and uploaded it. All of them were deceased. And I asked it to color code the relationships and form a tree. And this is its idea. It picked the colors and it picked the array. Now, what can I do with this? Absolutely nothing other than it's a nice art piece. But sometimes when you just give it some free rein like that, it will show you something in a way that you hadn't looked at it before. It might give you an aha moment. Now, I know many of you are thinking, ooh, I could upload my DNA matches. And you could, but you're not gonna because you don't have permission of those living people, right? So unfortunately, they have to stay wherever you tested. Now, it is phenomenal with historical perspective. I had my own Outlander moment here for those of you that like the show or the books. I have a seventh great grandfather who had a business associate I just didn't understand. This man had been Presbyterian and he had served in the British military, but he switched sides and became a staunch supporter of James Stewart, who is the Roman Catholic who was trying to overthrow the British so that he could become in charge of Scotland. Well, why would someone do that? I had no understanding. So I asked AI and it gave me these 5 reasons. I kept those in the back of my head as I continued to research. And by the end, I could understand it was all about his political strategy and ambitions, right? He had personal loyalties to himself. He was discontented with the current regime. He thought he deserved a promotion in the military and he was bypassed. He didn't care about legitimacy and he didn't care about national sentiment. It was all about him. And when he realized he picked the wrong side, he up and left for the colonies and reinvented himself. So if you have family that you don't understand why they did what they did, maybe why did they pick that particular place to migrate to? What was happening where they were? Why did they leave? Ask it and it can tell you some really interesting information. Now, one part of the genealogical proof standard is to do thorough research, and that often trips us up because How do we know we're doing thorough research if we don't know something exists, right? So I have recently, when I have something really complex, I turn to AI. This was revolving around a stolen identity of a Civil War soldier in 1890 in Indiana. It actually did happen quite a bit. And so I love perplexity for this particular task. It is clear, it's succinct. You can see there's a lot of boots on the ground close to where I live, so I don't even have to go far. And it gives me actually more information than I'm sharing because this is too busy of a slide anyway. It gave me another category with the URL. So I could go right there and find out the hours of operation, where I should park, all that stuff we need to know before we go. Besides that, these tables I can take and put directly into Excel because that's where my research log is. Think of how much time I'm saving. I don't have to recopy all of this over and over. Now, I do like what Jeannie gave me. It gave me institutional depth. I don't know why, but I always forget about the National Archives in Chicago, and they got great stuff there. So use as many as you want to get as much information as you want. Perplexity also does something nice. It gives you something called a plan of action. So if you're new to genealogy, by all means, check that out. It'll help you go from start to finish on what you should be looking at. Now, it was really wonky with family trees at the beginning. It has gotten some software that has helped it, some graphic design tools. So it does a lot better now, but I prefer using Canva. And it's phenomenal for timelines, especially if you've got some people with the same name in the same place at the same time. Put all that information in and it'll help you analyze it. It will give it to you as either a graphic or a narrative. Now, I am somebody that really values historical accuracy and ethics. And so you might be surprised to know that I do use the graphic design tool to create a graphic of something that doesn't exist. And I've done this 3 times with some of the books that I've been writing for my family. The reason that I do it is because no photo exists. And for my younger readers, they're not going to understand the concept. What you're seeing here was a story about the Palatinate that I was writing, and my family had to escape from their village as the 30-Year War was beginning, and they fled to Holland. And at the war's end, they went back to their village to find it completely devastated. All that remained of the inn that they once ran was the fireplace, and growing out of it was a sturdy beech tree. Well, they knew when that village was destroyed by the age of the beech tree. So that's an interesting concept, right? And as adults, we get it, but a younger person might have difficulty understanding that. I mean, they didn't have war correspondents back in the day to say, and on this day, the army marched through. So this is the best we can do. But when I use it, I definitely source it that it was created, it was not real, it's created by AI. Now, I use DALL-E, which is a part of OpenAI for this. But if you don't have the paid version, here is your workaround. If you have the Microsoft suite of products, and that would be Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, PowerPoint's what I'm using right now. You bring up PowerPoint, bring up a blank slide, and when you click on Home, you'll see on the right-hand side, it is going to say Copilot. That is Microsoft's embedded AI. You can type in the box what you're hoping to get a picture of, and it will give you 4 renditions. Now, this is all about bias. And I am a member of a lineage society, the descendants of Lady Godiva. And my great grandma never rode a horse naked. That story came about because 300 years after her discussion with her husband Leofric, there was a scholar who took the story that was written in Latin by a Roman Catholic priest, and the person translated it wrong. And so people kind of thought it was titillating and they added more characters like Peeping Tom and it took on a life of its own. But that's not what happened at all. So I asked my GPT if it could create a poem. Yeah, it can do poetry for you. It could do sonnets or haiku, whatever you want, and a graphic that I could submit to the newsletter. And I got chastised by the GPT. It said, Lori, I can't give you a picture of a naked woman on a horse. And I said, I never asked for that. That is bias. It didn't happen. And so you got to train it. You have to tell it when it has these false memories. And so you can see what it ended up coming up with, which I think was quite nice. Now, my last slide today is a hallucination. It's my third one of the year. And it was helping me because I did something kind of stupid. I had two Google photo accounts. One was my husband's and one was mine. And our cell phone photos would go directly to these. And we had this set up for years, and I never really paid much attention to it. And now all of a sudden, Google wanted to charge me because of all the space it was taking up. So I needed to get those photos out of there quick. So I turned to AI to help me with my organization. And it told me how I could batch them out. And that was beautiful because within one day I had that problem solved. But then I realized I had another issue. I had naming convention problems. So we were working on how I could batch change those as well. When you see at the very bottom, it said, almost every genealogist I know, myself included, has a mountain of photos. No, it is not a genealogist. It is not human. It is computer code and it doesn't have family photos. Well, it didn't until now. So when I see something like that, that was my third hallucination of this year, I push back and I got a little snarky and I said, so Jeannie, what's your photos of your motherboard? And Jeannie responded, touche, picking up on my tone, and said, if I had family photos, it would be of my aunt tape cassette, my uncle's zip drive, and my great grandfather punch card, which made me stop and think AI does have a family tree. So I got sidetracked, and sometimes I just play with it. So I asked it to give me characteristics of its ancestors, its birth and death dates, and also create graphics. So I formed this tree for my research assistant, Jeannie. Now, my favorite is the tape cassette because I had completely forgot we used to have to take a pencil and wind the tapes. Well, it remembered that part. So do have fun with it, play with it. But when you see a mistake, definitely point it out. So we've come to the end, and I hope I've given you a brief overview of how AI can help you with all of your genealogy tasks. And I know your brains are popping. I'm going to take questions in a minute. But if you think of something later, you see the QR code, it's on your syllabus and it's on this slide. By all means, take a clip of that, or you can go to genealogyatheart.com. That is my website. It will take you to my blog page. And in the upper right-hand side, there's a search bar. Type in the word AI in there. And all of these things that I've talked about today, the directions for each step by step will come up and more because I also do an intermediate and an advanced class. And so now I'm ready for your questions.
So these are in order, and I think some, they're going to be from like this is going to be from the beginning of your
Sure,
presentation.
sure, no worries.
Irene says, what does the vocal information have to be in to summarize? I think she's talking about what kind of file it needs to be in for
Okay,
ChatGPT to do a
sure.
vocal.
It could be
Yeah.
in a WAV file or an MP4. And here's a little trick that I didn't include because of time. If you have Microsoft Word, you can bring it up, and on the ribbon, there's something called Dictate. And if you click into Dictate, you can talk into it and it'll transcribe it right there for you. Now, if you have something like one of these other files, like from YouTube, those podcasts, they already come in MP4s. And if you just go on that site and you click around, you'll be able to access it and you just upload it.
Deborah says, I would like to create a map using my ancestors' address over time. Is that information searchable through AI, or is she gonna have she would have to feed the addresses into the AI, right? And then but it
That's
could make a map.
yeah, if you have the information already, you can do that through Google Maps. There are presentations out there that can take you step by step. I'd look at Legacy Family Tree because I've seen one there, and I know NGS has done that. National Genealogical Society has had that in the past. But if you don't know the information, you can have it help you, but basically it can't go into Ancestry or Family Search and find that particular census for you. It will tell you, look in the census for this or look in city directories. It will tell you, ideas, big ideas, but it can't go in and pull that out for you.
That's what I wondered. Okay, David says, can I use Chat GPT or another AI app to transcribe my grandfather's letters? His handwriting is difficult to read.
Oh my goodness, yes. In fact, and this is at Allen County Public Library because I waived the copyright for them. I have a copy of all the books that I've written, and one of them is called Thanks to the Yanks, and it's all the World War I letters of my husband's grandfather. And his handwriting, he wrote this on the battlefield, right? So with pencil, and it's over 100 years old. So it was very hard to read. I did use AI to help me, but you've got to be careful because it doesn't always pick up. Transcribus would be the one that would do a better job, not perfect, but that is a learning curve in itself to get there. But by all means, yes, you can do this. Or here's another technique that I tell professional genealogists to do. Just read the letters out loud and have it being transcribed. Like I mentioned with Dictate, there are other softwares, programs out there that will do the same, and it will transcribe it as you read it. When we read it, we sometimes are just thinking like the large language models. All they do is guess what words are coming next. Well, our brains function that way too. So try that approach.
All right. Thomas says, does any question that I ask AI and in which I supply family information, does this question become public inside AI? So what are the
Good,
privacy expectations?
good question. And that depends on which one you're using. If you have OpenAI Chat GPT, no, it's only using it for you. If you wanted it to go into everybody's, then you'd have to go into settings and change it and say, I want the information in the training data. Claude, now you have to go into the settings and change it that you want to keep it private. That wasn't the case until this summer. I don't know why they changed that. And same with Google Gemini. You can now go into privacy and say, I just want this for myself.
Myra says, you said the table could be popped as a PDF into Word. Can it also be downloaded as an Excel file?
Yes, and it's called a CSV when it's an Excel file. You can do two things. You can download them, or you can just copy and paste it right into either Word or Excel.
Okay. Christy says, can AI tell me all the Baptist churches in a given county during the years my grandmother lived there?
It can help you with that. I would also encourage you to use Family Search Wiki. That's pretty good. And I would look at, and that's not complete. Nothing's complete, guys. You know that, right? So we have to we're on an Easter egg hunt all the time. I would also look at city directories around that time period to identify them. Contact the local historical society or genealogy societies there. But my intermediate workshop shows you some amazing things that it could do that I didn't even know it could come up with. So try it, but it's not going to be the only place you're going to look.
Right. That brings me to your comment that you made at the very beginning that AI is not a search engine.
No, and I think that's the biggest misconception and why people think it doesn't give them, the answers. When this lady had posted on Facebook about what she was looking for, I had to laugh and I thought, why didn't you go to the Kroger app and just see if they carried that or Myers? Like if I lived in Florida, I would have looked at Publix. They would have ordered it for me. And I'm thinking, why are you asking AI this? It didn't make sense. And I think we're so used to now Googling, right? We treat it this way, but it needs more. It needs the who, what, when, and as much of those as you can to give it direction.
And that reminds me, we have a couple patrons who call us every once in a while. At least they check with us, but they'll say,
Yeah.
"Oh, I asked Alexa this question and she told me this. Is this true?" And I'm like, "No, that's not true." Whatever,
No,
like they're checking it up with me to make sure that it is true. And I'm like, "No, Alexa steered you in the wrong direction." So you had a good instinct there to question it.
you have to question everything. I mean, not we can't just question AI. We have to question the world, right? We question the world every day. The weather person says it's going to be, snowing tomorrow and then it doesn't. I mean, it's not their fault, right? I mean, weather patterns change. So you have to question all the time. And if it doesn't make sense to you, it is probably nonsensical. What I do though is often like sometimes my predominant go-to is Chat GPT, but I do use all of them. And Perplexity now, and I meant to mention this, this is cool, you guys. If you have a Venmo or a PayPal account, you can get the extended Perplexity for 1 year for free. All you do is go onto your either Venmo or PayPal account, look around there, type in Perplexity, and you do have to give them a credit card, but they don't charge it for a year. So I took advantage of that last week. AI had a discount for students, and they had no age limit on students. And my take is we're all learners, lifelong learners, right? So back in August and September, you could have gotten a subscription to that for really cheap for a year. So check around, just like you do when DNA, or they're going to have before the holidays and you're going to get a couple more kits. Check around all the time and you can get on these things for a reduced price.
hmm Very good. Okay, we got two more questions. We'll get to
Okay.
those and we will end.
Okay.
Deborah says, what are some good OCR software applications for genealogy? Do you happen to know?
Deborah, I love that question. And here's the reality. I chose not to go forward with purchasing it because I had already invested the money in buying those things. The lady wouldn't donate them. And there's no law in Indiana that says funeral homes have to keep their records, which is sad to me. And I didn't want them she told me if I didn't buy them, and no one bought them, they were going in the garbage. And so I paid over what I should have. So I did not do that. I ended up indexing that the old fashioned way. But here's the thing, folks, if and Deborah, do this. Go to your favorite AIs and ask them, what brand do you need? I'm using a microphone so that you can hear me clearer because Sarah and I beforehand were testing out my sound and it wasn't as clear if I didn't use this mic. I didn't know what microphone to buy. So I asked my Chat GPT Genie. Genie gave me a list of five, from cheapest, because Genie knows me, to most expensive. And I went on and looked around for them and I found a great deal for one and I've been very happy with it. So ask it and it will help you with that.
Okay. And this is the last question. I think it's kind of a broad question. You can probably go in a lot of different directions.
Okay.
Marie says, is there any way to have AI organize my genealogy files on my computer?
It will tell you exactly how it will, yeah, it really will. I have most of my stuff saved in Dropbox and then I back it up to a hard drive. Okay. And then I keep I'm paranoid, y'all. I just am. I lived in Florida for 50
Me
years
too.
with hurricanes. So, um, I have it in different places because this is my life work and I don't want it gone. So if you're keeping it on your computer, your first step is to put it somewhere as a backup if something happens to your computer. Okay, I'm not wishing evil thoughts, I'm telling you reality. And the second is I had naming conventions when I was saving it to Dropbox back in the day, and now it's just not working. So I talk with it and it helps me organize how I can do that. So all of the things that you have, certainly It can summarize those things for you if you want to create a family book or you want to put it in, some software like Legacy or Family Tree Maker or Roots Magic, whatever. So yeah, it can help you with all of that.
All right. Well, I think that does it. That is all of our questions. And I think everybody has gotten something out of this. We got a lot of good stuff in the chat. Thank yous from people. Tips, people have been chatting amongst themselves about what they do. And so I think it's been a really profitable hour. So we thank you, Lori. Oh, yes, I see one last question. Will the recording be available? Yes, it will. Give us a few weeks to get it edited. So thank you, Lori, again. We're glad to have you
You're
here, and
welcome.
we're glad to see all of you here, and we'll see you again next Tuesday at same time, same bat channel. Bye.
Bye bye.